Hello, I'm Sarah Robinson from Nautilus International, and I'm going to do an interview today because we're doing a piece of work at Nautilus on the rise of electric vessels powered by shore-charged batteries. Used mainly for short hop ferry crossings, these vessels were pioneered in Scandinavian countries and are set to be introduced more widely across Europe. However, concerns have been raised by trade unions that safety and training standards are not always in place for electric vessels or for the port infrastructure for charging them. So, to find out where we are with this, I'm talking today to Rune Malterud, who is Assistant Director and Technical Manager of the Norwegian Union of Marine Engineers. Welcome, Rune.
Thank you for that.
So, to start with, could you tell us what in particular are the risks to seafarers of operating the technology and what kind of training do they need?
The risk is first a high voltage. They operate with high voltage every second when they are on board. And in IMO we have make a regulation for that. We also have make a training program for that. So that is under control, but we also have accident with the cables because when you connecting some in magnetic or directly connection, the cable will vibrate and break. So you could get electrical shock to the passenger. They also need to have education to operate the big cooling system needed. And also we have some accident with fire because they have no education on it. And if you get a fire, the battery will self ignition and you get a terminal runaway. And the temperature there could be above 1100 degrees and melting the steel. So the construction here is very important. So the firefighters from ashore also need the same competence as the personnel on board. So firefighters and rescue personnel also is a part of the education we have make for the personnel operate battery ferry. But the most danger, I think, is also if you get a terminal runaway, you get very, very toxic gases. And only if you breathe once, you will die. So personal protection equipment, you also need to have special training on and how to put out the fire, use infrared camera, for example. The alarm system must be totally different from other old-fashioned system. You need to be totally retrained to operate a battery ship. If I could say it very, very easy. So
That's
it's a
really
lot of things.
interesting. Yeah, no, I wouldn't have thought that.
So one thing for a ferry, for example, because this is most of the ship who use battery for pollution are ferry because of the range they have. And the ferry in the night they lay up, and then the crew go to sleep on board in the ship. But in the night they have the main charging system on, and that is enormous voltage and megawatts you put on. And if you don't have watch keeping with the engineers on that system, when every cooling pump are running, every ventilation fan is running, you could get a fire and you put all the seafarer in danger if you don't have watch system. So manning, competence manning and watch keeping is also a keyword here, if I could say here.
So
So
that's obviously what you're after. I mean, how's that going? Is that like, do you have all of those things in your national standards in Norway about the training and the watch keeping?
yes, we have make training for that in cooperation with the training center. and also the fire and rescue system in Norway. We have worked together and we have make courses, good courses, but the problem is these courses cost money, and it's the ship's owner who should pay for all this education by the EU directive, and they don't want to pay for it. So we have big problem with that. But all the personnel who have been on the courses, they also get a certificate, of course, and they feel now good. Before they was nervous to serve on board because they didn't know how it functioned. And then you are on the mental health for the seafarer also. If you don't know what you deal with, you get problem. So, but after the courses, and we also have make it in English, and we also have do these courses in UK, for example, and other country also. We have courses and we have guidelines. We have also guidelines made by the industry, the oil and gas and shipping industry, together for safety, who I also are a part of. We have make guidelines how to operate this battery vessel ships. Because we use it not only on ferry, we use it on drilling ships, we use it on offshore service ships,
Okay.
and we have also three different way to do it. In many years, we have operate ROV, for example, with battery. And in the ship, we put the battery under the deck in special constructed room, but we also have it in container on deck because of the danger. So
Oh,
so
okay.
so we need to be ships specific trained. So the courses we have make is a computer based courses, but then the last day everybody go on board in their own ship and they are familiarized to this system, because that
Yes.
also is a very,
Yeah.
very big problem. We have no standard of the charging connection. We have no standard of the battery system. So you can have maybe 10 different types. So
Mm.
if you go one courses for this ship and come to another ship, you will find a totally other system. That also is a big challenge for us.
So tell me, you mentioned earlier that you had been doing some work at the IMO, the International Maritime Organization. Is that to try and implement the Norwegian standards internationally, or and what about what you're saying there about the lack of standardization in the systems? Is that something you're trying to address as well?
Yeah. Yes, as I say, a long time ago, because I also are share of the ITF Maritime Safety Committee, and long time ago we start to make a document about all the alternative fuel, and since I have deal with lithium-ion battery for many years, and we have a lot of experience of that. We put in that document the Norwegian experience with the lithium-ion battery, and we managed to present this in Maritime Safety Committee, the document, and in fact we use that document when we develop regulation now for alternative fuel, as we call it. And of course we use the lesson learned from Norway in there, and then we make interim guidelines from IMO and put out, but still it's up to every flag state to implementate these guidelines, and that
Mm.
is the biggest challenge we have. So we really need all the union affiliates to be aware of what we have of good regulation and how to use this and practices and impact the government in the flag state you are belong to, if I could say. So
So
that
you mean
is
every union in the ITF, the International Transport Workers Federation?
yeah.
Yes. So
And all of this document we have, but nobody knows about it. That is the problem. So yeah. So if we could do something together there to get it known by the seafarer out there, wherever you are, because I think most of the ship today they have maybe small lithium-ion battery. You can see everybody have a cell phone, and in the cell phone you have a lithium-ion battery. So we start there, and we also have make regulation how to deal with cell phone if they take put on fire, for example, in a cruise ship. Then you need a special boxes of steel with water in, and you have to transport the mobile phone out to deck, etc., etc. So we have a lot of good praxis, but I don't think so many knows about it. So we should really have some seminar on web to make it uh, seen about for everyone, because we have regulation, but we need to cooperate to get it praxis. And also in Europe, for example, it's not a problem because by law it's a ship's owner who should pay. But for example, in Asia, they have to pay for all of this by themselves. So that is a problem for our member or colleague. So we have some challenge, but I think if we stay together and say human safety is the most important, and it costs very little to give the competence. It costs a lot of more money when you get on fire and the ship is sinking.
Yeah, good point. So how can people find out about their rights to this training and safety standards? I mean, where can you look for that? And what should you do if you feel like you're unsafe on board a battery-powered ship?
Yeah, the first you have to do, because that's very important to say, every seafarer is employed and they have rights and duties. So we need to start with every single seafarer. And if this seafarer is not feeling well or need more competence to operate the system, this seafarer should contact their union first, and if the union don't have the answer, they could contact Maritime Safety Committee in ITF. We have a special email, and then they can get the information needed based on the ship they are on, because that's important. We cannot say if you are on a battery ship you have to do that, like this. We have to go a little bit deeper into the system and see. But everything of this is it's regulated by the ISM code.
Okay.
And every ship they need a ISM certificate and a MLC certificate. So there you have the connection between the technology and the human. Every seafarer can also, if they have implemented MLC, contact the port state controller and give them a message, also anonymous, and say on this ship the safety for the human is not taken care of, and then they have to investigate, and in worst case they have to deny the ship leaving the port also. So cooperate with union, ITF inspector and port state controller is very, very important. That is the most important, because as I say, we have the regulation, but we need to dare to use it.
So yes, that's certainly at Nautilus what we would say to our members if they feel like they're not getting the right operational training for
Yep.
battery-powered vessels. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell people who might be watching this video in the maritime community or more widely?
You can see where come the electricity from. In Norway, it's not a big problem because we have a lot of waterfall. That is green energy. But if you have to import electricity from Germany, for example, who closed down the nuclear plants, They produce electricity with black coal.
Mm.
And what is black hole? That is fuel.
Yeah.
So, so, and on top of that, you produce it. And we talk about energy. To produce energy, you need energy. And when you have produced it, you also have to transport it in one way.
Mm.
So it will be double up use of black energy before you can use the clean energy. So that's also why it's important to see some country, they could say yes, we have make it some part of it at least. But other country, they are totally other ways. They are they will never make it because of the political decision is totally stupid, if I could use that word. So the technical or the political message must look to the technical aspect with this common goal we have to reduce the emission. That's the only way to do it. So and also one thing we are a little bit concerned about is if the ship's owner don't give the necessary competence or equipment, the seafarer could be criminalized because they have to release some of the energy in one or other way to the air or to the sea. Or if you have a fire, for example, with this very toxic and corrosive gases, it will impact the nature and the human very well,
Mm.
and then they will jail the chief engineer and the captain. So the criminalization picture is also a concern here, and also we have a concern about sabotage. Cybersecurity, sabotage, take over the control of the system, and use the ship as a weapon, we could say. And by the way, when we talk about weapon, we have a situation in Europa now who many countries they want to use ordinary seafarer and ordinary ship in war situation. And when we talk about battery vessel, they are useless in this situation because there is no infrastructure of the charging. And if you go for one city, you have one system, and then another city have another system. So it's not possible to use them in this war situation. So that's also something to think about. It seems to be a clever solution, but in the end, maybe it was not so clever at all.